The afternoon sun was blazing down, painting the big iron gates of Fort Liberty in North Carolina a deep, burnished gold. The sky was high, clear, and vast, the kind of blue you only see out in the middle of the country. A dry wind rustled the tough scrub oaks, kicking up a few crisp, dead leaves that skittered across the hot asphalt. The clock had just ticked past 3:30 p.m. Brenda, Bree Sullivan, a sharp-looking woman of 52, stood there. She was a little jumpy, excited even, to be out of the house for the first time in a long while. She'd put on a classy, dark blue dress for the occasion, and it did a nice job of making her fair skin really pop. Clutched in her hands was a hefty box of gourmet chocolate chip cookies she'd picked out with her nephew, Billy, in mind. The weight of that box felt like the weight of all the love she had for the kid. I wonder how Billy's holding up? Billy, just barely turned 25, had chased his dream of becoming a soldier and thrown himself into one of the military's toughest training programs, a special operations preparatory course down here. It had only been a few months, but the last time he called, his voice was tight, strained with a mix of exhaustion and high-stakes tension. Bree's sister was pretty sick, and her brother-in-law was stuck overseas on a work trip. She felt like it was her job to show up, which is what brought her all the way to this huge army base. She stood straighter, feeling the crisp, serious atmosphere of the post. There was a weird echo in her mind, a faint, distant memory from a lifetime ago. But right now, she was just an aunt, a simple civilian with a big heart. With a calm smile, Bree started walking toward the visitor center. That's when it happened. Hold it right there. The voice was razor-sharp and absolutely freezing, cutting right through Bree's steps. It came from a young woman, a first lieutenant, standing in front of the desk, arms crossed. The rank insignia on her collar caught the afternoon sun, flashing like a piece of cold steel. Her name tag read Lieutenant Peterson. This officer, Peterson, gave Bree a long, slow stare, dragging her eyes from Bree's shoes all the way up to the top of her head, like she was doing a quick calculation. What was in the officer's eyes was a deep sense of automatic judgment and pure annoyance. The classy gift bag in Bree's hand, the nice but not flashy dress, the carefully done but understated makeup, it all seemed to grind on the lieutenant's nerves. You could practically feel her contempt. Bree hid her shock and tried to keep her voice even. "Excuse me," she asked gently. Lieutenant Peterson made a small, snorting noise and then spoke, her lips twisted. "Visiting? Did you make an appointment?" No appointment," Bree explained. "I just wanted to drop off a few things for my nephew, a Private William Billy Shaw. Just want to hand him a care package, if that's allowed." "Private William Shaw? The new recruit, right?" Peterson said the name like it was something gross she just stepped in, then her gaze crawled over Bree again. Bree felt a cold shiver run down her spine. A few younger soldiers nearby stopped what they were doing and glanced over, whispering to each other. Bree felt a prickle of their mockery. Her heart started to hammer in a frantic, ugly rhythm. Lieutenant Peterson, looking like she was enjoying Bree's discomfort, let out a ridiculously dramatic sigh. "Ma'am, this is an army base. Civilians, especially people like you, can't just wander in off the street." "People like me?" Bree asked quietly, a tiny edge of steel finally creeping into her voice. Lieutenant Peterson either didn't notice the tone shift or simply didn't care. Maybe she was hoping Bree would push back. The lieutenant leaned in close to Bree's ear, her voice a cold, sticky whisper, like something slithering. "That outfit. Are you working in the nighttime hospitality industry?" "Something like that." In that single, awful moment, the world went silent for Bree. The wind, the soldiers' whispers, the distant shouts of a drill sergeant, everything was instantly muted. All that was left was the word, the insult, pounding directly into her brain. Nighttime hospitality. Escort service. The clear, cutting malice in the officer's voice, the instant, absolute condemnation because of her rank, felt like a razor blade slicing into Bree's chest. All the blood seemed to drain right out of her. She stood there, speechless, her lips trembling. Lieutenant Peterson smiled faintly, a satisfied smirk. She'd gotten the reaction she wanted. A few muffled, snickering laughs came from the nearby soldiers. Regulations are clear, ma'am. I can't let you in. You need to leave. Now. It was a final, cold order, a complete and absolute rejection. The lieutenant turned her back on Bree as if shaking off something dirty. Humiliation. Pain. And a slow, fiery rage that started to burn deep in Bree's gut. She stood frozen for a moment, the gift bag shaking in her furiously tight grip, her knuckles white. Her long, dark lashes trembled over her downward gaze. But deep inside the eyes hidden beneath them, there was no longer just simple sadness or confusion. In the icy silence, something deep inside Brenda Sullivan was starting to wake up. It was dark, deep, and had a terrifyingly sharp edge. The lieutenant's phrase, nighttime hospitality, had burrowed into Bree's mind like a toxic barb. The world seemed to tilt. The gray guardhouse looked like a massive, forbidding stone wall looming over her. Why is she saying this to me? She bit her lip until she tasted the metallic tang of blood. She was trying desperately to hold back the tears of pure frustration, grinding her teeth. To that young officer, an ordinary civilian like Bree, with no rank, was just an obstacle to be dismissed, a piece of trash to be thrown out according to protocol. The wind, now cold, whipped the skirt of Bree's dress. She'd taken over 3 hours and 2 different trains to get here, then walked the unfamiliar last mile. And for what? All I wanted was to deliver something warm to my nephew, the one and only kid in my life. That's it. That pure, simple feeling was being mercilessly stomped out of existence right in front of me. I closed my eyes slowly and took a long, deep breath. The autumn air filling my lungs was harsh, cold, and dry. In that instant, my mind exploded with entirely different pictures. I saw long nights of strategy meetings covered in mud and sweat. Days spent analyzing endless streams of intelligence data on a dozen screens without blinking. Memories of coolly commanding a unit in a foreign hot zone, with gunfire and the stench of burnt powder screaming in my ears. I saw the day I graduated from the United States Military Academy at West Point, giving the commencement address a day of total pride. Captain Sullivan, if it weren't for your analysis, this operation would have failed. We owe you. Bree, your command presence is always calm and right on the money. We'd trust you with our lives. You are our Aegis Shield. The compliments, the praise from generals, peers, and the people under me, that was my pride. It was everything I, Brenda Sullivan, had risked my life to build. It was solid proof of trust, earned through my ability and my character, not just my rank or gender. And at the very top of all that was the rank of Major, the Silver Oak Leaf. That shine represented everything I'd dedicated over 25 years to the military. But 7 years ago, I walked away from all of it. My mom was sinking into Alzheimer's, and my sister had just gotten a terminal cancer diagnosis. The most important people in my life, my family, were all falling apart at the same time. Career or family? I spent countless nights sleepless, wrestling with the choice, and in the end, there was only one answer. I still remember the sad, disappointed look on my commanding officer's face when I handed him my resignation papers. Are you sure about this? Losing you is a huge blow to the Army. No, a huge blow to this country. Sir, that's kind of you to say. But I have things only I can protect now, I'd said, bowing deeply. In that moment, I didn't feel a single bit of regret. I promised myself I would protect the people I loved with my own 2 hands, not with a rifle or classified information. For the last 7 years, I've lived a genuinely quiet life. I opened a small coffee shop, finding peace in the smiles of my regular customers. I only heard about the world I used to inhabit through the occasional call or email from old friends. I truly thought it was a million miles away from me now. I'm just a civilian now. Just a coffee shop owner. But then the thought hit me. Even if I took off the rank and lived as a private citizen, my soul didn't just change. The commitment I made to defend the country, to stand up for people, and to fight injustice, that soul was still in me. Lieutenant Peterson's face flashed in my mind. The twisted, smug superiority in that young officer's eyes. She had no problem using the power of her uniform to crush someone she saw as beneath her. Is that the kind of person teaching Billy? I clearly remembered my nephew's tearful voice on the phone the other day. Aunt Bree, I don't know if I can do this anymore. It wasn't just the tough training. Was something happening that was eating away at his heart? My anxiety became a cold certainty. The disrespect I just faced here was probably just the tip of the iceberg of what my nephew was dealing with. I slowly opened my eyes. All traces of confusion and sadness were gone. What was left was the same deep, cold intensity one used to have as an intelligence analyst for the Defense Intelligence Agency, DIA, the look I used to find the single piece of truth hidden in a mountain of enemy lies. I get it now, I said quietly, not to anyone in particular. This isn't just about one person anymore. This is about the future of the organization and the young men and women in it. I can't just stand by and watch the military I built and loved rot from the inside. I gave up everything to protect my family. If that same family is now being unfairly hurt, then it's time to take back the power I thought I'd thrown away. I straightened my back, still standing exactly where I was insulted, and fixed my gaze back on the post gates. The air around me suddenly became different, taut, like a wire drawn too tight. It was the unique, quiet authority of a commander ready for battle. Lieutenant Peterson, a 28-year-old officer, felt a surge of annoyance at the figure still standing behind her. Is she seriously still here? She thought, clicking her polished toe against the floor. Her anger wasn't just about the civilian bothering her job. Bree's very presence stirred up some dark, messy feelings deep inside Peterson. The classy dress, the well-cared-for hair and skin, and, most of all, that unbroken dignity despite being insulted. Everything about Bree seemed to be something Peterson desperately wanted but could never have, and it mercilessly stoked her feelings of inferiority. Peterson was from a rural, poor family. Her parents fought constantly about money, and the only things they ever told her were harsh orders like, "Don't mess up," and "You're all we've got." While other girls were obsessed with dating and fashion, Peterson grit her teeth and focused only on her studies. Getting into the military academy was her one escape. No tuition, and she even got a paycheck. Graduation guaranteed her a stable career, an officer's rank, and respect in society. Finally, she could shed her pathetic past. That's what she believed. But the reality was way rougher. The military academy was packed with real elites, guys and gals I couldn't even touch. People from old-money military families going back generations. Those who were fluent in 3 languages thanks to growing up overseas. All-American athletes who'd competed nationally. Next to them, I, the kid who clawed her way up purely by grinding out grades, felt small, pale, and completely out of place. That feeling didn't go away after graduation when I shipped out to my first unit. In fact, the raw, unfair reality of the workplace made my heart even more twisted. Commanding officers looked at me differently because I was a woman and would aggressively jump all over every tiny mistake. Meanwhile, the guys who were slick and played the system well kept getting promoted left and right. Why me? Somewhere along the line, a nasty, distorted sense of entitlement took root in Peterson's heart. I earned this rank. I'm one of the chosen ones. I'm not like those clueless higher-ups who don't respect me, or those sheltered civilians. To protect that fragile, warped ego, she started treating anyone she judged beneath her with absolute contempt. Women like Bree were perfect targets. She probably grew up wealthy, got everything handed to her, went to some decent college, and is probably being taken care of by some mid-level corporate husband. She doesn't know what real struggle is. She just lives to look pretty and suck up to people. What do women like you know about anything? Just seeing Bree made a knot of resentment burn in her gut. That's why she wanted to knock her down. Hitting her with the most insulting thing you can say to a woman, the nighttime hospitality jab, was almost a reflex. When Bree went silent, a look of pure shock and hurt on her face, a dark, satisfying sense of superiority spread through Peterson. Lieutenant Peterson, one of the young male privates nearby, asked nervously, "Don't you think you went a little far?" She seemed to come from a long way away. "Shut up." Peterson silenced him with a venomous glare. "Whose side are you on? Are you actually trusting some random civilian with no history? You've got zero situational awareness." "Yes, ma'am." "My apologies," the young soldier stammered, his face pale, snapping to attention. The other soldiers around them flinched at Peterson's fury and quickly looked away. In this small, enclosed area, she was the absolute authority. No one dared challenge her. Satisfied, Peterson turned her attention back to Bree. That woman's still here. She was just standing silently in front of the gate. Her presence felt like a silent accusation, pushing Peterson's irritation to the breaking point. Why is she dragging her feet? She should be running off crying by now. The dark feelings inside her swelled into a thick, poisonous cloud. This isn't over. I won't be satisfied until I've completely shattered this woman's pride. Peterson slowly stood up from her chair, her heels clicking loudly on the pavement, and walked back toward Bree. A nasty smirk, like a predator closing in on its prey, curled her lips. She had no idea that this single step was her first, fatal move toward the destruction of her career, no, her entire life. She couldn't see that the quiet woman in front of her was a force far above her pay grade. All she felt was the cheap thrill of humiliating someone she saw as weak. Peterson stopped right in front of Bree again, the clicking of her heels echoing. A deeper, stickier sneer was plastered on her face. The young soldiers nearby focused on them, like an audience waiting for an execution to begin. "Something else you need, ma'am?" Peterson asked, jutting out her chin, speaking to Bree as if she were a beggar. Her voice dripped with fake pity and thinly veiled disdain. But Bree's reaction wasn't what she expected. Bree didn't look down or tear up. She simply raised her head and looked directly into Peterson's eyes, her own eyes totally flat and empty of emotion. "Yes, Lieutenant. I'm asking again. Can you please instruct me on the official procedure for meeting Private William Shaw?" Her voice wasn't trembling. It was surprisingly calm, flat, and almost administrative. That lack of emotional response, the calmness of a machine, only grated on Peterson's nerves more. She was waiting for her to cry or yell, for some kind of breakdown. "Huh." Peterson let out a high-pitched, mocking laugh that cut through the tense air of the base. "Procedures? You couldn't figure that out yourself? You're a grown woman. Can't you use the internet?" She sounded like she was scolding a slow child. More snickering came from the soldiers. "All the information is on the official website these days. Did you really come all this way without even checking that? You must be incredibly sheltered." The stream of insults didn't just target Bree's actions, they attacked her character. Yet, Bree didn't flinch. She just waited silently, patiently, for Peterson to finish. That infuriatingly self-assured silence finally snapped the lieutenant's last nerve. And another thing. Peterson's tone became shrill and hysterical. She pointed a shaking finger at Bree's dark blue dress. "That outfit, that's the biggest problem. Do you even know what this place is? It's a sacred workplace that defends the country. Coming here dressed up like a night butterfly, you clearly have a fundamental lack of common sense for a soldier's relative." A soldier's relative. Peterson's arbitrary assumption about Bree's background was ludicrous, but she was too blinded by her own anger to realize how wrong she was. If you were a soldier's wife or mother, it's even worse. Your clothes are reflecting badly on the soldier himself. Can't you even understand that? It was no longer an official warning, it was a pure, unadulterated tirade. The cold, judging stares from all sides felt like knives. Bree was completely isolated. For a normal person, this would be the point of total despair, where you run away weeping. But Bree's mind was eerily calm. Let her talk. Every ugly word she spits out is just dry kindling added to the fire of my resolve. The deeper her insults, the heavier the judgment would fall later. Bree was no longer the victim. She was the cool, collected prosecutor, carefully recording every crime the defendant was committing against her own soul. Peterson finally paused, breathing heavily, winded from the verbal assault. A twisted sense of accomplishment was on her face. Bree finally let out a small, slow breath. "I see." It was a single phrase, neither agreement nor denial, just an acknowledgement. But it sounded like a strange, final declaration, signaling both an end and a beginning. Peterson frowned, trying to figure out what she meant. In that moment, Bree calmly reached into her handbag and pulled out her smartphone. The movement was fluid, smooth, and completely devoid of hesitation. Oh, what's this? Peterson sneered again. Gonna call your husband to cry about it? The words didn't reach Bree. Her long, pale fingers tapped the screen with terrifying, almost mechanical precision. Her eyes were fixed not on Peterson, but on someone on the screen. Crying to your boyfriend? Or maybe your daddy? Lieutenant Peterson was sure of her victory now. A cornered woman's desperate, pathetic last gasp. That's all this was. She watched, arms crossed, waiting to hear the excuse. But Bree's next move quietly defied Peterson's shallow prediction. Bree found a specific name in her contact list and pressed the call button without hesitation. After a few rings, someone picked up. Hello, Bree said. The first word was not flirtatious, nor desperate. It was casual, familiar, and slightly nostalgic. It's Bree. How are you holding up? The instant that voice hit Peterson's ears, a faint chill ran down her spine. The air around the woman had completely shifted the moment she made the call. She no longer sounded like a weak victim being put down. Yeah, it's been a while. I'm sorry to call out of the blue. I just need a small favor from you. Bree spoke in a voice that suggested a deep, familiar trust. Peterson narrowed her eyes. Who is she talking to? Bree then calmly and concisely explained the situation, coming to see her nephew, being stopped at the gate. Her words were simple, but anyone listening closely would instantly understand the severity of the situation. So, I'm at the gate of the FortLiberty Army post right now. And one of the officers just told me I couldn't have a visit. The name of the post made Peterson's face tighten for the first time. My base. What is this woman doing? A sliver of fear began to spread in her chest. The officer said a visit wasn't possible. Bree glanced at Peterson. Her eyes held no emotion at all, just the cold, analytical gaze of someone looking at an inanimate object. Peterson swallowed hard. Her heart started a rapid, unpleasant beat. Things were moving in a direction she couldn't control. No way this woman knows anyone military. If she did, she'd have dropped the name right away. She's bluffing. But that brittle denial shattered like glass when Bree delivered the next line. The person on the other end must have asked a question. Bree paused for a second, then spoke clearly, her voice like ice. Yes, the officer in charge's name is. Bree's gaze locked directly onto Peterson's eyes. The stare felt like a sharp, frozen arrow piercing Peterson's heart. She was paralyzed. Bree finished her declaration quietly. Lieutenant Peterson. Lieutenant Sarah Peterson, I believe. In that instant, Peterson felt the blood rush from her extremities. My name. My rank. It was just relayed to someone unknown on the other end of that phone. The woman she'd thought was just a nice-looking middle-aged civilian suddenly looked like a gigantic, unknown monster. That one phone call was the trigger that would shake her fragile world to its core. A voiceless scream caught in her throat. Bree glanced at Peterson's ashen face and gave her final words to the person on the line. Her voice was utterly devoid of emotion, a tone of absolute zero. Yes, that's right. Thank you. Talk to you soon, Ethan. Ethan. Peterson didn't know the name, but the sheer weight of what that name represented pressed down on her skin. The dominoes fall. Enter the general. Across town, General Ethan Shaw, his fist still clenched around the phone receiver, stood motionless for a moment. From the window of his office, he could look down on the orderly buildings of the Department of Defense, but he wasn't seeing them. The only thing in his mind was the voice of his old friend, a voice he hadn't heard in years. Brenda Sullivan. His only true peer who always ran ahead of him back at the military academy. Her intelligence, her charisma, it drew everyone to her. After graduation, she'd been assigned to the Defense Intelligence Agency, DA, pulled off countless complex operations, and was dubbed the Aegis Shield, a legendary female officer everyone was sure would become the first female chief of staff of the Army. 5 years ago, she'd thrown away that brilliant career for her family. He never imagined he'd hear her voice like this. Lieutenant Sarah Peterson. The name Bree had given immediately connected with Ethan's memory. Sarah Peterson. A young officer who'd gotten some unfavorable reports during the last personnel review. Unruly attitude towards senior officers and aggressive overcorrection of junior troops. He quickly brought up her file. The details matched his memory perfectly. Graduated high in her class, but her unit performance was mediocre. Lack of teamwork and a tendency to create conflict due to overconfidence in her own ability. Her last promotion was delayed because of a stern caution from her direct superior. Figures, Ethan thought bitterly. He instantly understood Bree's situation. This Lieutenant Peterson likely saw Bree, a civilian, as a chance to feed her twisted superiority complex, acting aggressive and insulting without knowing who she was messing with. Yes, that's right. Thank you. Talk to you soon, Ethan. Bree's final words replayed in his mind. She'd called him. It wasn't just a personal issue, it was a quiet declaration of war, a chance to correct a rot in the organization. She hadn't changed at all. Understood, Ethan answered firmly into the phone. Bree, don't do a thing. Just stay right there. 15 minutes. 10 maybe. I'm on my way. Thank you, Ethan. That helps. Bree let out a soft sigh. It wasn't a sigh of relief. It was the sound of a commander confirming that the counterattack was ready. Hanging up, Ethan immediately called his aide. Get the commander of the 18th Airborne Corps on the line. Tell him I'm heading to FortLiberty immediately. And call the post headquarters. Tell them I'll brief them later. He stood up, grabbing his service jacket from the wall. The single silver star of a brigadier general shone on his chest. Lieutenant Peterson, you just poked a bear with a stick, he muttered. Bree wouldn't use her power to just crush someone emotionally. The fact that she was setting this up meant there was a bigger reason than a simple insult. Ethan knew exactly what it was. Her nephew, Billy, must be in trouble, and Bree figured out the cause was this lieutenant or the toxic culture of the unit itself. It wouldn't take long to drive to FortLiberty from his office. He snatched his car keys and bolted from the office like a storm. As he ran down the corridor, he was already formulating several plans to resolve the issue while minimizing organizational damage. He pulled out his phone and called one more person, the one person he needed to close the net. It's me, Ethan. Colonel Sullivan. You good right now? The man on the other end was Colonel Kevin Sullivan, Bree's older brother and the commander of the 82nd Airborne Division, which had jurisdiction over FortLiberty.